My assertion here today, the thing I want to talk about more than anything else, is going to be really hard for all of us to hear. I didn't make it up. I really learned it the first time from my wife and manifesting work and Bruce Lipton and some of those other people that some of you who've been with me a long time have heard me talk about. But there are a lot of things that are holding you back right now in your life that are just truths you've adopted in the past, ways of looking in the world that you've adopted in the past as real, and there's nothing to them.
Welcome to the Ignited Recovery Podcast, a new way forward for anyone looking for answers but feeling left out. If you've been searching for empowerment, triumph, and purpose, you've found them right here. You won't hear the same solutions, and you're not going to have any excuses to fall back on, because Ignited Recovery allows heroes to rise and become their best selves. I'm Dr. Sophie Jaffe, and I can't wait to be your guide on this journey. Are you ready to become an ignited hero?
The massive ways in which our brains are almost like built to keep us stuck there, and therefore how much hard work we have to do to get to the other side. So hopefully by the time this thing is done, I will bridge the gap between all of those. So one of those is experience I have with a lot of clients. The other one is really the stuff I'm working on in my book. And I'll give an example. I think examples always work really, really well. I just got off the phone with a person who's interested in doing some work, and she's an I'll say near Olympic. She was on the Olympic team in a year that the Olympics were boycotted, so she couldn't go. But she was a near Olympic swimmer, business entrepreneur with, I'll say, moderate success. A couple of marriages, a handful of kids. Husband died about 5 years ago, and she's been alone for those 5 years. And what she didn't realize until 5 years ago when her husband passed, was that at some point in the past, she started relying on other people to kind of guide her life experience. So she sort of just took a back seat in her own life and let circumstances dictate where things went. So initially it was husband one, then there were all the kids, and there was the business, and husband one, and she separated, she married again. And kind of she just moved from piece to piece. And when her second husband passed, she didn't have a lot of her own personal direction that she wanted to take things in. And that caused, as we talked about purpose and a lot of the other pieces that are important here, that caused a fracture for her. She felt lost and isolated and didn't really know much of what to do. And from that place, she didn't feel like she had any tools to rescue herself. What she ended up relying on was cannabis. So she went headfirst into cannabis. So she took enough edibles or smoked enough weed, didn't care enough about being that stuck. And that went on for years and years. Here's the thing that I think is important to recognize. So we'll start with that as a basic story, but I don't think that story is that different than any circumstances any of us find ourselves in, which just they accumulate over time. Does that make sense? They take decades to get to the end point, and we're there for the entire decades. So it looks like tiny little incremental movement in that direction, but then we feel stuck, right? Like at some point we just feel stuck. And that's where I think it's really, really important to understand how our brain works, because whether we like it or not, our brain operates in a really non-objective way. And I think that's really important for us to understand. I'll give an example that I was just giving in the book, super simple example, but even the definition of what is good and what is bad, what is allowed and what is disallowed, what is okay and what is taboo, right? Those things, they travel with us based on the culture we grew up in, the country we're from. So this is a really, really basic example, and excuse just how basic I'm going with this, but my assertion here today, the thing I want to talk about more than anything else, is going to be really hard for all of us to hear. I didn't make it up. I really learned it the first time from my wife and manifesting work and Bruce Lipton and some of those other people that some of you who've been with me a long time have heard me talk about. But there are a lot of things that are holding you back right now in your life that are just truths you've adopted in the past, ways of looking in the world that you've adopted in the past as real, and there's nothing to them. Now, the reason that's really upsetting to hear sometimes is because a lot of people will move into that space like I used to around this. And we start feeling guilt and shame around the idea that we are actually in control of some of these pieces. But I want to change the conversation around that. It would be magical thinking to assume that you would have the ability, the built-in ability, to just change the world around you when you were born. For years, you are unable to do anything on your own. That's not true for all animals. There are a lot of animals, day one, they're out and running about. They're fully functional on day one of being born. And humans aren't like that. A lot of mammals aren't like that, but humans are especially not like that. What do you think that does to you? If from day one, you are literally unable to feed yourself, walk, escape danger, take shelter, stay warm, what does that do for you? So there's a reason we're social animals. There's a reason we depend so much on other people, because our actual survival, period, point blank, depends on the help of other people. I think it's fair to say we did not all have the same experience growing up, right? Our brains are made to replicate what we know and rely on past information for future behavior. How troubling is it that we learn from past experience? We only know to expect that past experience to move forward. Our brain is literally made to, and I'll talk about specific versions, so you don't have to just believe me about this, but I'll talk about specific versions of what the research has shown us about this. Our brain is made to bias the way we look at the world based on information we already know, but a lot of it we wish we could change. And now we're faced with a block, guys. We're faced with a block. We want to change something. Our brain is resisting against it. We keep getting results we don't like, and we don't know what to do about it. And I don't know about you, but it gets fucking frustrating sometimes. Because you see it, you know in your head, you should be doing something else. You know in your head, the people around you should be doing something else. You know in your head, there's a potentially another path, but you have no idea what it is, and you have absolutely no idea how to get there.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ignited Heroes Recovery Podcast. I really hope you found the information here useful and that we'll see you back here next week. And look, I want to make sure that this podcast is the most useful it can be for you, so please let me know by emailing info@ignited.com if there are any specific topics or questions you'd like to have addressed. As usual, if you like this episode, I would love for you to leave us a 5-star review and rating. Thanks, and see you next week.